Fox Business recently had some woman named Nancy Tengler on to discuss inflation. This is the ongoing discussion, as if it's a huge mystery for conservatives working at Fox Business or corporate anchors working at CNBC. Why is inflation so bad? It's so high. What can we do about it? And they will mention the Federal Reserve and its refusal to increase interest rates here and there, but the conversation almost inevitably devolves into blame the minimum wage workers making a little more money. Let's watch.
Powell is pretty much saying we're not going to start raising rates until we see a sustained period of inflation, if it in fact is not transitory. So they've been saying it's transitory, it's temporary, and yet the Powell comments today are saying we're not going to move until we actually feel like it's sustained. So we haven't seen that yet, but the producer price index is up 7.3% year over year. These are hot numbers, Nancy. Your reaction?
Yeah, they are hot numbers, Maria, and they're on the heels of hot numbers in May. Higher than expected PPI in May, higher than expected CPI in May, which forced the Fed at that time to raise their inflation expectation from 2.4 to 3.4%. I think one of the things that's troubling is that I don't actually really know what transitory means. I mean, I get the concept, but when you're raising wages, and this is happening at small businesses all across the country, you're not going to reverse those wage increases. I mentioned earlier that we have a client who has raised prices 3 times this year, 2%. 8% and 7%, and he's raised wages. So how does that not sort of trickle through the economy in terms of increasing inflation?
So understand what she's doing there, right? She's shifting away from a conversation about the Federal Reserve and how it continues to keep interest rates at a ridiculous low, when in reality, like, the point of the Federal Reserve is to keep an eye on inflation. And as inflation becomes a problem, what they typically do is increase interest rates, right? That gets inflation under control. But the Federal Reserve has refused to do that. I mean, they announced that they're gonna start increasing interest rates a couple years from now. But in the meantime, I mean, the cheap money that corporations and the wealthiest people can get their hands on is certainly increasing or contributing significantly to inflation. It's cheap money. You borrow and you invest. That's why you see private equity firms borrowing at cheap rates and investing in residential properties. What does that do? That leads to inflation in the housing market. But this woman is shifting from that conversation to a focus on literally like powerless people who at this point, based on the federal government, only deserve $7.25. But on a state level, we've seen some increases in the minimum wage, and she thinks, no, that's the real problem. We need to focus on that.
Yeah, I knew you'd make this about housing somehow.
How could I not?
Anyway, yeah, you're right. And obviously, it's not an area that I have expertise on, but I kind of doubt it's the most significant factor. As you've pointed out, the behavior of the Fed is obviously more important. And if the point of a show like that is to try to influence this, it seems like that would be more productive to try to put pressure on the Fed rather than, I don't know, like, is she trying to put pressure on business owners, small business owners to not do this?
Yeah.
Like, no, I know that like temporarily you think you need to raise wages, but you need to think about it. Once you raise them, you probably won't lower them. I know it sucks. I wish that we could just, whenever it's possible, just slash wages as much as possible, but that's really difficult and the peasants will revolt and all that. And the thing that bothers me about it is what you're sort of just free to talk about on Fox Business. So it's Fox Business. Fox is supposed to be, sort of representing the people who've been forgotten by these damn coastal libs. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer don't get you, we get you. And we don't care if you ever make a dime more than you do right now. We might talk about jobs. Like if you lose your job, that's bad. But as long as you have one, that is as much advocacy as we will ever get for you. Never, ever expect to make any more money because we don't care about that. And why wouldn't they feel that way at Fox? I mean, Trump got in no trouble for, on the debate stage, multiple times calling for wages to go down. Even the other Republican candidates, desperate for a way to fight against him, didn't jump on that because they don't want to advocate for higher wages either. And nobody watching Fox has a problem with this. No conservative voters seem to think it's weird that the people who have their back, they're defending them. Trump's our guy, he wants to make America great again, but only in vague ways, never in terms of your actual economic situation.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. In fact, what was actually implemented during the Trump administration was a further deterioration of the economic situation for most working Americans. The tax cuts for the rich. I mean, if you look at the polling in the lead up to the 2017 passage of the tax cuts for the rich, you'll notice that most Americans were not in favor of it. That includes Republican voters. But it's amazing how they didn't really hold it against him when it came to voting for him again. Anyway, totally. Now the other thing I wanted to draw a little bit of attention to in that clip was how, and this is a subtle trick, but understand why she does it. She mentions small business. She's like, I know a friend, small business owner, he increased his prices several times. One time 8%, one time 7%, I'm paraphrasing, but she gave 3 different instances of their small business friend increasing the prices for whatever product this fictional character sells. And then immediately connects that to, and he increased his wages for his workers, right? Indicating that, listen, if you want workers to get paid fairly, if you want them to get paid more, you're gonna have to pay more for your products, right? It's a way of pitting the working class, working Americans against one another. So understand why that messaging takes place. And some of you might think, look, Anna, you're looking at this and you're reading into it too much, right? Maybe she's not as nefarious as you think she is, except I did look into her profession, what she does, where she works. And she's the chief investment officer for Laffer Tangler Investments. I remember that name, Laffer. Laffer, who's Laffer again? Oh, that's right, we talked about Laffer recently on the show. It's this guy.
For those people, Sandra, who are coming into the labor force brand fresh, not old timers who've been around for a while, the poor, the minorities, the disenfranchised, those with less education, young people who haven't had the job experience, these people aren't worth $15 an hour in most cases. And so therefore, when you have a $15 an hour minimum wage, they don't get that first job. They don't get the requisite skills to earn above the minimum wage. And after a few years, they become unemployable. And after becoming unemployable, they become hostile.
Yeah.
That kept getting worse.
Yeah, it kept getting worse. So that's the guy.
They're human garbage, and when you point that out, eventually they get all hostile at you.
No, these are the worst people. These are the worst people.
And that's who you book for a network that's designed to appeal to people who've been left behind and just want someone who will finally advocate for their interests when it comes to Mr. Potato Head and Dr. Seuss and maybe critical race theory, or at least the version of it we'll talk about, not for anything having to do with your economic situation, your housing situation, your insurance situation, your schooling situation, none of that.
I think it's worth also doing a deeper dive. Jordan Yule's not here. You can watch his Twitch show, Deep Dive with Jordan Yule.
You're gonna get sued when you use that term.
Twitch.tv/TYT. His episode last week with Kenny Clips and Ryan Grimm was fire. So make sure you guys check that out. But anyway, I do wanna just take a quick look at what the economic situation is for American workers, particularly during and after the pandemic, because we do have some new numbers, okay? The AFL-CIO recently did a study to see what happened to wealth inequality, income inequality during the pandemic, and wow, looks like the system really is rigged against the average American worker. In fact, the average S&P 500 CEO made $15.5 million in 2020, and chief executives made 299 times more than the average employee's salary. In fact, according to the AFL-CIO, in 2019, the average CEO to worker pay ratio of S&P 500 companies was 264-1. Today, compensation of chief executives rose by more than $700,000 on average in 2020 compared to 2019.
That's gonna lead to inflation when you pay these people more than they're worth?
No, but you don't get it. There, magical things happen where those at the top of the economic ladder getting paid even more. That's okay. That doesn't have any type of negative ramification in our economic system. I mean, garbage. And when it comes to the minimum wage as it stands now, $7.25, the consequences of that for minimum wage workers is severe, okay? Couple that with the housing market, and I mean, it's a recipe for disaster. People working minimum wage, for instance, minimum wage jobs full-time, cannot afford a 2-bedroom apartment in any state in the country, and that's according to the National Low Income Housing Coalition's annual Out of Reach report. In 93% of US counties, the same workers can't even afford a modest 1-bedroom apartment. No, but you guys, the problem with the economy is that minimum wage workers are getting paid too much, according to Tangler and Laffer Investments. Okay, this year workers would need to earn $24.90 per hour for a 2-bedroom home and $20.40 per hour for a 1-bedroom rental. That's an increase from $23.96 to and $19.56 respectively from last year. The average hourly worker currently earns $18.78 per hour, more than $6 short of the wage needed to afford a 2-bedroom rental. And I can't help myself, just one more graphic, okay? Because this data is important. This is an actual look, a sobering look at our economy and what inequality has led to. The average minimum wage worker in the United States would need to work nearly 97 hours per week to afford the average 2-bedroom home. That's more than 2 full-time jobs. So John.
Well, I'm sure those CEOs are working at least that much. I mean, if they're getting these huge pay increases, they've clearly got to be putting in the work. I've also noticed over the past year that CEOs are just more talented than they used to be, more charismatic, better at motivating the staff. I think they should be paid a huge amount. I think your average CEO should get a pay increase that allows them to buy a 2-bedroom yacht. I think that would be fair. No, it's nonsense. And of course, the numbers that you gave there of what on average you would need for a 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom aren't even in the conversation for the minimum wage increase. And I understand we're talking about all wage earning employees, but a lot of people are on the minimum wage, and not even the most fanciful, like maybe Kirsten Sinema will give to us fantasies would actually result in them being able to afford that.
I know.
And it doesn't mean theoretically that they can't have it. Afford means under a certain threshold of your income. But those thresholds are established by advocates for the working class for a very good reason. It's supposed to allow you to have a relatively comfortable standard of living, maybe the capacity to, I don't know, save a few dollars so that if the first minor financial emergency hits you, it doesn't bankrupt your entire family. And so, where are the advocates for those people? They're not generally invited on Fox Business.
I hope they're represented here.
Yeah, Anna, start a business network, but one that's not designed to help business, but to be a check on business. Every time I come on the show, I tell you should do that.
Yeah, I mean, I do have a lot of time, you know? So maybe.
Are you working 97 hours per week?
No, I love, look, this kind of topic is honestly like where my passion is. This and of course housing, which we're gonna talk about when we come back from the break. But yeah, I don't have time to do a separate show on that. So I'm gonna try to bake it into this show as much as I can, especially on Wednesdays.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.